It had been years since I last saw Imran. Back then, he was just a skinny, energetic teenager, always chasing after soccer balls and asking endless questions. Now, at 25, he messaged me out of the blue. "Auntie, I'd love to visit. I miss you." My heart fluttered reading that. Life had been quiet lately, too quiet. At 35, I'd grown used to silence, the kind that wraps itself around your evenings and never lets go. His message felt like sunlight pouring through a dusty window. I spent the whole morning preparing. I didn't tell him, but I cooked his favorite chicken biryani, just like he loved as a kid. I even lit a soft candle in the corner, not for him, really for me. It had been a long time since anyone visited, especially someone who once felt like my own child. When he arrived, my breath caught for a moment. He had changed, taller, broader shoulders, confident, but his smile, that same boyish charm, made my eyes sting unexpectedly. He hugged me tightly, his scent familiar and new all at once. "You haven't aged a bit," he teased. I laughed, brushing it off, but something in his gaze lingered, just a second longer than expected. We sat on the couch for hours, catching up like old friends. He spoke about his job, his apartment in the city, his travels. I listened, genuinely proud. He listened, too, about my little garden, the books I'd been reading, and how I had learned to fix the leaky tap in the kitchen all by myself. His interest didn't feel forced. He wasn't just being polite. He was present, really present. As the evening wore on, something unexpected stirred in me. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was warmth, unfamiliar, and confusing. I watched him as he spoke, the way his hands moved, the calmness in his voice. I reminded myself, he's your nephew. You helped raise him. But emotions, they don't always ask permission before they rise. He complimented the food, asked for seconds, even helped wash the dishes. We laughed when he accidentally broke a glass, and I felt young in a way I hadn't in years. I saw myself in the mirror that night after he went to bed. My hair was tied in a simple bun, a smudge of turmeric on my cheek. I smiled, not for how I looked, but for how I felt. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something more tender, something unnamed. A recognition. A spark. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew the silence in my home had shifted. His presence filled a space I hadn't realized was so empty. I went to sleep that night with a strange kind of peace. Whatever it was, it had begun quietly, with a visit, a meal, a conversation. And sometimes that's all it takes. The next morning, Imran suggested we go out. "Let's do something fun, just you and me," he said, eyes bright. I hadn't planned anything, but I agreed without hesitation. We decided on the art museum, a place I hadn't visited in years. As we walked side by side, I noticed how easily we fell into rhythm. Our conversation flowed, no awkward pauses, no forced topics. It felt natural, easy. Inside the museum, he stopped at nearly every piece, asking what I thought. I loved that. Most people pass by art without a second glance, but he really looked. When he paused at a painting of two figures standing quietly in a field of light, he turned to me and said, "This feels like peace." I smiled. I hadn't felt peace in a long time, but in that moment, I almost believed I could. He noticed things, details others missed. A chipped frame, a stroke of color at the edge of a canvas. And he noticed me, too. When I adjusted my scarf or tilted my head at a sculpture, his eyes followed, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but in a way that made me feel visible. It was strange to feel noticed, not as an aunt, not as an older woman, but as someone worth looking at. After the museum, we grabbed lunch near the lake. The air was crisp, the water calm, and the sky a soft blue. I caught him watching me again. While I spoke, his expression unreadable. "You really haven't changed," he said again, softer this time. I didn't know how to respond, so I smiled and looked away. A breeze swept through, carrying silence with it. Not the uncomfortable kind, just stillness. Shared. We walked along the lake after eating. He told me stories about his life, relationships that didn't last, friends who moved away, moments he wished he'd handled differently. There was something raw in his voice, something honest. He wasn't trying to impress me. He was just being real. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone in years, about how lonely I'd felt, about how I'd convinced myself love was something that happened to other people, not to someone like me. He stopped walking for a moment and said, "You deserve more than just quiet days and small talk. You deserve to be seen." My heart paused. I looked at him, really looked. His eyes held something deeper than affection, something searching, hesitant, but undeniably warm. On the way home, we didn't talk much. Music played softly in the background, but the silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of questions neither of us had words for yet. I found myself wishing the drive wouldn't end, that we'd keep going past the town, past the day, past the rules. When we finally reached the house, he turned off the car, looked at me, and smiled. I smiled back, heart uncertain but open. Something had shifted, and we both knew it. That night, the quiet felt different, not heavy like before, but expectant. Imran was on the porch, sipping tea under the stars. I joined him without saying a word. The air was cool, the sky wide open, and the space between us seemed smaller than it had ever been. He looked over and smiled gently. "Thank you for today," he said. "It was perfect." I nodded, unsure how to respond. My heart was full, confused, afraid to name what it was feeling. I didn't know how much I needed today. I finally said, "It reminded me I'm still here, that I still feel." He didn't flinch. "You've always been here," he said softly. "You just got used to being invisible." His words sat with me longer than I expected. It was like he'd reached into a place I kept locked away. I hadn't told anyone how numb I'd felt, how I'd stopped expecting anything new from life. But with him, it felt safe to admit the truth. I got tired of hoping. I said, "After a while, you stop looking for magic." Imran looked at me, with something unspoken in his eyes. "Magic doesn't always look the way we expect," he said. "Sometimes it just feels like home." There was a pause, a long, thoughtful silence. I didn't know what he meant exactly, but I knew he wasn't just being poetic. He was talking about us, about this connection that had no label, no plan, but had taken root anyway. I wanted to ask if he felt what I did, but I was afraid of what it would mean. So I asked instead, "Isn't this complicated?" He took a breath. "Maybe, but not wrong. Not if it's real." The way he said it, calm and certain, made my heart ache in the best way. I had spent so much of my life defining myself through others, daughter, sister, aunt. I'd never stopped to ask what I wanted outside those roles. Now, sitting beside him, I wasn't his aunt. I was just a woman. And he wasn't just my nephew. He was someone who saw me fully. He reached out and gently took my hand. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. Just honest. His touch was warm, steady, like it had been waiting for permission. I didn't pull away. I let the moment be what it was, quiet, emotional, and deeply human. We didn't talk much after that. We just sat, fingers intertwined, listening to the world around us. It wasn't about declarations or decisions. It was about recognizing something rare and unexpected. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what I felt. I wasn't hiding behind duty or age or fear. That night, I didn't fall asleep questioning myself. I simply closed my eyes, holding on to the feeling of being seen, of being chosen without explanation. That was enough.